Hey everybody, Jake here with TrendSpider to go over some ways to find an edge in the market right now. And before I even go about, the biggest tool to kind of have is your mindset. If you're not in the right mindset to trade, it doesn't matter what tool you have. You could have literally somebody handing you a trade, and if you're not in the right mindset, you're just not going to be able to trade that. And a lot of people have had to deal with, the mindset recently of, just unprecedented times, and it's hard to trade right now. So I want to be able to at least show you guys some different features on TrendSpider that you can implement along with a sound mindset to trade. So what I'm going to go over is raindrops. I'm going to go over anchored volume by price, and then I'm going to go over the gaps in pretty much across the board. But I'm going to be going over the gaps on Boeing, especially since that has just been one that looks like Swiss cheese at this point. So the first thing that I want to go over is raindrops. And you can see here on Zoom, this is a really, really cool case study that's gone on in the last few days. What you can see here is we've got the hollow candle on the left, we've got the raindrop on the right, and what you can see here is you can see on March 19th, we closed at 123.59 or the high 123s. I'm not sure what the exact close was. But you can see that there was a lot of wick up here, and we did pierce through this previous high, which I just created as resistance. But if you go to the raindrop, you'll see something very different. You'll see that the volume is actually pretty heavy above this line. And so what you can't see in the wick, you can see in the raindrop. And the raindrop is essentially just a volume-based candle. You've got the VWAP for the first half of the period on the left-hand side. Typically, this would be your opening price on a bar chart. And then you've got your VWAP for the second half of the period on the right-hand side, which would typically be your close on a bar chart. And then the second layer to the raindrop is the volume profile that is drawn on the left side for the first half of the period and drawn on the right side for the second half. So you can see most of the volume on the right side was heavily focused at the top of the day's range. And so what you can see what happened after this, if you're looking at this candle just as a hollow candle, you may think, sellers came in and really pushed the price down. Well, yes, sellers did come in and push the price down, but for all of those sellers that came in, there was somebody that was absorbing those shares at a large kind of point where, anything that was being sold off was just being gobbled up. So what you can see is over time, as we continue, the price closed above this line, but still you can see that there's not a lot of conviction here, at least as a function of price. But if you turn on the volume with the raindrops, you'll be able to see that all of that volume that was supposedly sellers in this wick was actually, people selling into somebody accumulating those shares. And so what you can see is on a typical chart, this wouldn't be the easiest thing to navigate. But being able to use raindrops in conjunction around crucial areas of both resistance and support, you can use this with support just the same way. And so what you can do is you can really visualize that volume flow without getting caught up in just the price action. So that's a really cool example on Zoom over the last few days. The next one that I want to mention here is the 65-minute chart on QQQ. What I've done here is I've simply anchored the volume profile, or the anchored volume by price, and essentially it's just an indicator on TrendSpider called volume by price. There's no special name, and you'll see it right here. And so what you can do is once you have that turned on in your indicator list right here, on off, you're able to then really anchor from these important areas. So the first time I learned about anchoring was using the anchored VWAP, which is also something that's available on here. So if I wanted to anchor the VWAP and the volume profile from the same point in time, which I was taught by Brian Shannon to always do that at the top of these trends. So anytime that you've got a status quo change, anytime there's a strong reversal, you can see that we definitely topped out here. So that's where I want to anchor it from. And notice something really interesting. You'll see that the last few times that we've tried to move up, there's been so many shares holding at this particular area from around 183 down to 178. It's been very hard for the price to break through this area because it's kind of like friction. There's so many shares and there's so much kind of friction going on here. Notice how hard it took, the price actually didn't break through, but look at how hard it tried to break through. And each time it tried to create a new high, you see these wicks to the downside. And so that shows that, as the price was down here, all of this volume was holding at a loss. So as the price gaps up into this area, people are now like, okay, well, I'm break even. I'm either going to take a loss. You've got those people who think this is a turnaround coming in to participate as well, buying those shares. So there's a lot of friction here. And so, if we did happen to break through this area, notice that there's not a lot of friction above. Notice that we've got what's called a volume gap above, where you don't have a lot of shares held until you really get to this next area of supply above, which happens to be perfectly correlated with the Alphatrends Anchored VWAP as well here. So you're able to actually utilize both of these features in conjunction by anchoring at the same point. So you anchor the VWAP and you anchor the volume profile, and then you're able to visualize really, where these important levels are. If you just anchored the VWAP from this area, you're not able to see this big area of supply holding here. And then as price gets above this, this will now be your demand zone. But for now, we're kind of like in the supply-demand zone. The price is trying to figure out what it wants to do. Market participants are trying to figure out if this is a real move. And then once we do get through this supply area, you do have a lot of kind of room for price to move pretty quickly due to the lack of people holding here. So the next area would be the anchored VWAP above. This is the 65-minute candle simply because there's 390 minutes in a day. Divide that by 6 and you've got 65-minute candles completely even on 6 different candles. So that's the reasoning for the 65-minute candle. If we go to Boeing, this is one that I really am excited to share because this is something that we just implemented. This is a time where we've got probably more gaps in price than we ever had on something like Boeing. And without me having to go and kind of identify these gaps and have to, search for them, if I turn on this gap snake, it's essentially just called the gap snake, on and off, the gaps are automatically detected without me having to, essentially look for them individually. I mean, there's a ton above. So ideally, if you're a gap trader, these levels are going to be the levels that you're going to want to watch, moving forward. There's a ton of these areas above. So what you can do is, you can, let's say, create a line here. Say, right around this area, make it thicker, and then we can create an alert here. Oops. And we can add a little sensitivity, meaning the price doesn't have to hit exactly at that line. And then we can say whenever the price touches this area, I want to be alerted. Let's be alerted until 5 days have passed. So now I've got my area above. But then what I can also do is I can create an alert on the actual gap snake below, and I can know if the price breaks through this line, which would indicate that the that the gap is filling below most likely. So now I can really play these two areas without having to watch the chart. Whenever the price touches this area, I'll know it's time to look at, if I'm long, to get out. Or if the price starts to go into this gap area below, which would be indicated by this alert that's on this line, we'll know that, okay, maybe the price is starting to break down here. So every feature that we've gone over is kind of highlighting a different part of the analysis. Some people like to trade gaps in price. Some people really like to look at that volume flow. And so there's a lot of different ways to be able to use TrendSpider in a time like these to get some edge. As I mentioned, the first thing, being able to kind of have the mindset to trade is really the first step here, right? You need to have the mindset, and then you're able to utilize these tools effectively. So, everybody has good days, everybody has bad days trading. So, if this hasn't been the best time to trade for you, it's been in an unprecedented time for everyone. So, don't get down that I'm really not doing great. It's really the market right now is just absolutely baffling everybody. So when you have the mindset and the confidence to trade, this is something that's really useful. Being able to create these alerts, being able to visualize these areas, and then being able to capitalize on those moves when you have the confidence to do so. So hopefully this helps. We do have a 25% off sale going on right now. If you do want to try this out, there is 7 days free, so you're not just buying something randomly today. You have some time to test this out, some time to really swim in the waters with this over the next week or so. And this is going until the 29th of March. So you do have some time to sign up and check this out. So thank you so much for listening in. Once again, we've got the gap snake here that we went over. We have the anchored volume by price and the anchored VWAP by Alphatrends. And we do have the raindrops here. So hopefully this helped. Hopefully that you're finding an edge in this market. And we'll definitely have some more videos out like this soon. Thanks so much.